Hey everybody, welcome to God's Blessing Farm here in Nyota, Tennessee. My name is Rico Silvera. We operate God's Blessing Farm, my wife and I, Angelia. It's a 38-acre farm between Chattanooga and Knoxville. We raise a number of animals here. We raise donkeys for both protection and milk. We raise Icelandic sheep. We have some horses. We raise our own line of livestock guardian dogs, Muscovy ducks, Chinese geese. But what we're here to talk about today is this special animal. We raise Meishan pigs, and hopefully today all the folks who join us will learn a lot about this interesting and unique breed. I'd like to introduce everybody to Pink Lady. Pink Lady is from the University of Illinois Department of Animal Sciences. She is quite the rock star here. She's a 4-year-old Meishan sow that we were able to obtain as in the final dispersal of the Illinois herd. We were quite blessed. In the last 17 years, Illinois had not released any of their pigs to anyone, and we just happened to catch it at the right moment. As I said, Pink Lady's 4 years old. She's about a 400-pound pig, and she is a perfect representation of the Meishan breed. The Meishan breed comes originally from China. It was raised. It comes from an area in China that has been domesticating pigs for almost 5,000 years. It's quite possibly the oldest heritage breed available in North America. Meishans are known for their docile nature. They're known for their hyperproductivity. Meishans can have litters of typically 14 to 16 piglets. Pink Lady here last spring had a litter of 20. While they were in the research facilities, the American record is 28, and recently while speaking to another swine farmer in China, he told me that in 1982, a Meishan pig actually farrowed a litter of 42 piglets, 40 alive. As I said, Meishans come from an area of China where they've been domesticating pigs for 5,000 years. Meishans in China are considered a national treasure, much like the silkworm. I've read studies that the Meishan has 2,000 years of genetic separation between them and typical European breeds, and you've got to understand that most of the breeds in Europe were brought over here, and so when we talk about a heritage breed in the United States, we're talking usually about a 200 to 250-year-old breed, where with the Meishan we're talking about thousands of years in development. The Meishan comes from a region in China known as the Taihu region. That's because there's a large lake in that area called Taihu Lake. There's a series of pigs that come from that area that are known as Taihu pigs. Meishan is one. There's another smaller breed that looks very similar. It's called Fenjing. At one time in China, there were 3 distinct genetic groupings of Meishans. There was small Meishan, middle Meishan, and large Meishan. In the late 70s and early 80s, the large Meishan went extinct. In 1989, after 10 years of negotiation with China, the USDA, in cooperation with the University of Illinois and Iowa State University, negotiated the import of 99 Meishan pigs, approximately 33 males, 66 females. And these pigs were divided equally, both in number and genetically, between those 3 research facilities. And what I mean by that is, if there were 3 pigs from one litter, one went to Illinois, one went to Iowa State, one went to USDA. The USDA kept these pigs at the USDA Meat Animal Research Center in Clay, Nebraska. The University of Illinois constructed a special research facility of over $1 million, and Iowa State took them to their farm in Ames, Iowa. The purpose of the importation of the pigs was that at the time, the U.S. pork producers were in crisis. Pork prices were down. Pork as a meat was thought of as being not healthy because of the fat content, because this was the time when they were telling us that margarine was better than butter. And further, U.S. domestic breeds in the 80s were not highly prolific. They would have litters of 6, 8, 9. There was crush rates where the mothers would lay on their pigs, and so you would have a 400 or 500 pound pig that was producing 3 to 5 piglets every 6 months. From an efficiency standpoint, this was terrible. Meisans were brought into the country because they were hyper-prolific, that the USDA postulated, and it turned out to be true, it would take 15 to 20 years of selective breeding to get American domestic litter sizes up. Now here was this pig in China that was routinely having 15, 16, 18, 20 piglets, and not only that, they were great moms. They had a much higher, what they call farrowing to weaning ratio. In other words, the babies were born and the mothers were such good mothers that they were getting up to age where they could be weaned off their moms at a higher percentage. And the Meishan turned out to be everything that they said it was. Plus, it's this incredibly docile animal, and it's unique. But there was an issue. The Meishan is a lard carcass pig. It has lots of fat. In the studies with the Meishan pig, and they took them and crossed them to domestic breeds, with as little as 25% Meishan in the cross, they were getting much larger litters, they were getting better moms. But they were also getting more fat. This was all occurring right about the time that the American pork industry launched the new white meat campaign. That while these tests were going on and experiments with the Meishans at the 3 different facilities, the USDA was changing their pork grading system about every 3 to 5 months. And each new highest grade pork had less and less fat. And while you would get more piglets from a Meishan cross, you would also get more fat. That was a problem, because the efficiency that you gained in the amount of piglets that you produce, you lost because the processors would pay less because it wasn't grading out as the highest pork. So here we had a quandary. We had an amazing amount of money spent to bring these pigs over. They've been set up in 3 different facilities, and under the agreement with the Chinese, these pigs could not be released into the general population. These were to be strictly research pigs. Well, research facilities do what they do. They continued to research the pig because there was still a mystery of what made these pigs so prolific. And because they were genetically unique, as I said, they had almost 2,000 years of genetic separation, they were used as a control group in comparisons to other breeds of pigs. So for 25 years, these pigs remained in isolation, both from the general population of farmers and from each other. They remained in genetic isolation in 3 distinct herds because, talking to one of the early researchers, there was a level of competition between the 3 research groups. And they didn't share information, they didn't share stock. So we had these 3 genetically isolated populations. In 2014, a study was published, was done by Harvey Blackburn, who works for the USDA at the Genetic Repository in Fort Collins, Colorado. It was given to me by Gary Rohrer, who's also a co-author of it. He works at the USDA Meat Animal Research Facility. The purpose of the study was there was a proposal for a treaty in the UN that countries would sign up and agree to exchange unique genetics from each country, small populations of unique genetics, to each country. And the postulate is, what they wanted to know is, can you actually preserve the genetics of a breed with such a small population? They looked at the original importation DNA that went to that came into the country, and they looked at the pigs that were still at Iowa State and at the USDA. At this time, even the researchers at USDA weren't aware that Illinois still had a herd. And what they found was that the pigs had undergone something known as genetic drift. What genetic drift is when you take an isolated population of pigs, they actually change genetically and begin to drift apart. The DNA pairs that would normally be the same are now different. And the study showed that, it was called the Blackburn study, the study showed that the USDA pigs and the Iowa State pigs had not only drifted away from each other, they had drifted away from the original importation sample. What this meant was that we actually now have 3 distinct bloodlines of Meishans in the United States. This was first recognized by the American Meishan Breeders Association, which is the only registry for these pigs. And that is what we refer to today as the three bloodlines: the USDA bloodline, the Illinois bloodline, and the Iowa State bloodline. And Pink Lady here is a beautiful example of the Illinois bloodline. Well, we've moved to another area of the farm. In this area of the farm, we raise up some of the pigs we've bred here and evaluate them to see if they go into our breeding program. The girls you see here are all between 10 months in age, 19 months, 16 and 17 months old, all raised here on the farm, all pedigreed with the American Meishan Breeders Association. The very things that at one time made Meishans undesirable for commercial production of pork, because as the commercial business began to move towards confinement, pasture-type pigs like the Meishan, lard-type pigs like the Meishan became less and less popular. We almost lost entire breeds because of the rush for that dry white meat pork. But today on the modern homestead, as we start to reevaluate how we look at fat in meats, especially pastured fat, fat in animals that are raised properly, the Meishan is becoming a more and more popular breed for the small landholder. The reason being the very unique traits that make it a Meishan. One, they're very docile. Here on the farm, we have over 3 miles of fencing. We have no electric. To keep these pigs in, we don't need electric chargers, insulators, hot wires. We keep them in with woven wire field fence. In cases where we might have a boar next to a sow that we don't want them to breed, we'll reinforce that with hog panels, and then we use hog panels with smaller squares to keep our piglets in. So the docile nature of the pig makes it a really nice pig to have on a homestead. And they're great pasture citizens. They live with our livestock guardian dogs. Our chickens move in and out of the pasture. Our ducks move in and out of the pasture. We actually had a hen set up with her chicks in one of the farrowing areas with a sow and her piglets with no incident. They're great pasture citizens. They also have a much lower impact on the land. They get to about 350, 400 pounds. Pink Lady, the pig we just saw, that's as big as a Meishan gets, as opposed to having a breeder that grows to 500, 600, 700 pounds. Meishans tend not to root. No pig doesn't root at all. Pigs will root or wallow. If they're not fed properly, they'll root looking for food. But from an environmental impact, Meishans have one of the lowest environmental impacts on the land you can possibly have. Actually, the biggest impact they have is the weight of their feet. If you have areas, right now we're going through the winter here in Tennessee, although it looks like shirt sleeve weather, we've gotten a lot of water, we have some areas that don't drain well, you'll get some damage from their feet. But typically what happens is that next spring the grass comes back even stronger. So they're a great pig. The other thing about them is that prolificacy. Having that many piglets. Most heritage breeds of pigs, the most popular breeds today on homesteads, have typically very small litters, 4, 5, 6. So your efficiency as far as producing piglets either for a genetics business model or a meat model is much lower because you need one sow for every 5 piglets. With a Meishan, if you're going to wean on average 12 to 13 pigs, come on girl, 12 to 13 pigs, you're going to have a much more efficient producer of pork. Smallholder farms face different challenges than large farms. And smallholder farms need to look at their breeds of livestock that they bring on like tools in a toolbox. All breeds of swine are good for somebody. What you need to determine as a small farmer is what you're looking for in your breed of swine. If you're looking for a breed that's going to be docile, does not require a tremendous amount of infrastructure, if you're looking for a breed that's going to have large litters so you can have fewer breeders to maintain 12 months of the year, you can see by the growth that while they don't grow at a, quote, commercial speed, where you get 300-pound butcher weights, live weights by 10 months, they do grow much faster than a lot of the more popular heritage breeds. Our little girl there in the back, I don't know if you can see her in camera, with our dog next to her, that's Ling Tang. She's only 10 months old, and she is at 300 pounds. 300 pounds being typically the most popular butcher weight for a hog where you get the best yield. So you've got a pig that grows at an acceptable rate, is docile, easy on the land, and you're helping preserve something that's unique and rare. Our journey with Meishan pigs started in 2013. At that time, my wife Angelia brought me a link to a web page talking about these amazing Chinese pigs that had large litters, were super docile, had delicious tasting meat, were extremely rare, and I was fascinated. At the time, we've been raising heritage hogs since we started the farm in 2010. I was raising American guinea hogs. I'd raised Cooney, I'd raised Gloucester Old Spots. And with the smaller homestead hogs, the guineas and the coonies, you always face this glass ceiling, I call it. Small litters, slow growth, 18 to 24-month growth rates. The big thing was the litters. To try to produce any pork at all, we needed lots of pigs. It just really wasn't very efficient. They're great, all great breeds, and everyone has a different model for their farm, and we'll talk about that later. But as I started going through this investigation, it went from kind of scavenger hunt to detective story, and now at the end, I've traveled over 4,900 personal driving miles to put our herd together. I've talked to researchers from the original importation. I've been to 2 of the 3 research facilities involved in the original importation, and I've even established contact with some of the leading swine geneticists in China at Huazhong Agricultural University. And what's come of it is, as amazing as this pig is, it is critically endangered worldwide. Today, the Meishan pig in China is in serious decline. In China, pork is the #1 meat consumed. And China, with their growing population, their growing economy, is faced with the same pressures that the United States was faced in 1980. They need greater efficiency in their pork production. And quite honestly, they've adopted our methods. They use confinement pork. They're producing pork in high-rises rather than pastures. And the Meishan doesn't adapt well to that. But at the same time, the Meishan is a national treasure in China, and China is overseeing the fact that they do not want to lose these genetics. However, today in China, Meishan are only raised on 4 government farms. One government farm is totally dedicated to the small Meishan breed, which looks similar but is significantly smaller. The other 3 farms are dedicated to the middle Meishan breed, and it was the middle Meishan breed that was imported in 1989. All the pigs that were brought in were middle Meishan size. The problem is that these 3 farms only have 1,200 pigs for all of China, and only 10% of those pigs are boars. So that means within China there are only 1,200 documented pure Meishan pigs. There are some gilts out in the general population, but they're typically crossed, because in China only the government can own a Meishan boar, and only the government can state where a Meishan boar goes. Of those 1,200 pigs in those factory or in those government farms, only 120 are boars. So today in China you have less than 1,200 documented pure Meishans, only 120 are boars. Here in the United States, the American Meishan Breeders Association is going through a national herd survey right now, and all indications are there are less than 150 documented pure pigs in the United States. So if you take the entire worldwide population, you're probably talking about less than 2,000 pigs. And these pigs are important, their genetics are important. So if you're looking to add a pig to your homestead, you may want to consider the Meishan, not only because it's a great fit, but because it's an important conservation project. When I was negotiating with the USDA Meat Animal Research Center in Clay, Nebraska to get the last of their pigs. Those were great people. I will always be thankful to them. The pigs were scheduled to be slaughtered. In 2008, Iowa State began dispersing their herd, and they were done by 2010, but the USDA had had these pigs since 1989. They had never sold them to anyone. They had put them through generations of experiments, but they had come to the end of a trail where they didn't feel that the expense was justified by the potential return in research. And I just happened to call when they had decided that they were going to slaughter these pigs. And I got to talk to the facility director, and I pointed out that small farmers, homesteaders, are the best reservoir for genetics for unpopular breeds. We wouldn't have Mulefoot, Red Wattle, American Guinea Hog today if it hadn't been for small farmers. And if they could see their way clear to let us have these pigs, then we would do our best to make sure these genetics were saved. And to their credit, they said yes. We were able to get 5 distinct boars and 2 distinct sows from USDA. We combined that with our 2 sows from Illinois, and we had 2 sows and a boar from a farm that had gotten their pigs directly from Iowa State. Together, this makes the most genetically diverse herd of Meishans outside of the United States. And we're hoping in this video today that not that you will feel like you need to come forward and help preserve these pigs, but that preserving these pigs fits your farm. And that by bringing an animal onto your farm to preserve it, it also serves you as the breeder. What we talked about a little bit earlier was your farm model. And do Meishan pigs. There are plenty of reasons to raise Meishan pigs, but the best reason is that the characteristics of a Meishan pig fit your farm model. We're over here with Panda. Panda's our newest mom on the property. She just had a litter of 12 piglets. That's about average. She had 14 her last litter. They're in there munching away. Panda is a University of Illinois sow that we got from Illinois. She's Pink Lady's sister. She's about 375 pounds, just a little bit smaller than Pink Lady, but has all the same attributes that the Illinois bloodline shows. She's a great mom. But that's a lot of pigs. And so your farm model, I always ask people, I see that there are 3 different farm models for the small land homesteader. And we have 38 acres. I consider us a small holder. Are you raising pigs for personal use? You're not looking to sell meat. You're not looking to sell breeding stock. Are you in a meat model? And that is, are you raising pigs so that you can produce pork to sell to individuals, restaurants, CSA, however your distribution model is? Or are you raising pigs to produce quality breeding stock for other breeders? Here at God's Blessing Farm, and that's a genetics model, here at God's Blessing Farm, we are definitely and always have been a genetics farm. We've been blessed with putting together this herd, and we've worked diligently to try to identify breeders all over the United States. We've shipped Meishan, registered, documented Meishan breeder pairs to Washington State, Maine, New Jersey, Wisconsin, Georgia, South Carolina, Ohio, Illinois. So our model is that we produce breeder pairs. It's why we have so many boars. The genetic diversity that we have allows us to help breeders, responsible breeders, put together breeding herds that can go on long after God's Blessing Farm is gone. If you're in a meat model, you've got to have customers, and typically a meat model is, it's a very local model. You sell to the same people in your general area, and typically a genetics model is you sell to people all over the country, or at least in a region. The guys get a little nervous when I'm talking, but you can see how docile even Meishan moms are, that I'm sitting in the farrowing area with her and her piglets, and she's essentially asleep. I've even fed her, but she won't come out to talk to us. But Once you identify what your model is, then you can talk about how you need to profile your herd. If you're in a meat model, you need one boar. And depending on how much meat you can sell is how many sows you put into your herd. Remember, Meishan's produce lots of piglets. If you're in a personal model, you probably should have a pretty big family or relatives, because even with just 1 litter a year, raising up 10 or 12 piglets, that's a lot of pork. But in a meat model, you now have an efficiency where in the same amount of space, in the same amount of land, with a smaller breeder pair, size-wise, with a lower number of breeding sows, you can produce lots more piglets. When people are looking at a meat model, my suggestion is that you start out with a breeder pair and buy 2 feeder pigs, castrated males, and raise them up so that you've butchered them, you've tasted the meat, you've gotten samples to give to your customers long before you start breeding pigs to sell out on the marketplace. What I say is build demand before you build supply. If you're profiling for a genetics model, this is very early in the conservation effort for Meishan pigs. Meishans are not widely available, and when people come to me, all the places that we've sold breeding stock, it's almost exclusively breeder pairs. People don't buy individual pigs from me. In the 3 years we've been selling pigs, taking deposits on pigs, we've sold 2 individual pigs. Hey, Panda. To produce a genetically sound breeder pair long-term, you're going to need 2 boars and 2 sows. And that's an investment in facilities, that's an investment in stock. Registered Meishan stock is not inexpensive. So knowing, and I know a lot of times people tell me, oh, we want to do both. They're 2 completely different businesses. And yes, you probably will do both at one time, but one will be the focus. So my advice is, if you decide that these incredibly unique pigs are something you want to do, understand what you want them to accomplish, how you want to accomplish it, and how you need to profile your herd. Well, we're going to take a break from visiting the pigs and talk about one of the most important end products of Meishan pig, the Meishan pork. Meishan pork is treasured throughout the Orient for its flavor, its tender taste, and its fine-grained fat. Meishan pork is not the new white meat. It is not pork for people who are fat averse. It is not a vehicle for sauce. It's a standalone meat with an incredibly delicious flavor. What I'm showing you here is about a 3-pound ham roast from a Meishan pig. You'll notice it has a larger fat cap than a typical commercial hog. However, it is not one of those super large fat caps. What's really important is you see all this micro marbling throughout this deep red pork. Now there's a trick to cooking Meishan pork, and that's low and slow. Because the fat is a much softer, finer grain, it melts at lower temperatures. It renders at lower temperatures. The lard is incredible for use in lardo, other products in the kitchen, whipped lards. My wife uses it in soaps with great success. But really, it's this micro marbling, the ability of the pig to store fat within the muscle, which makes this an incredibly tender and delicious meat. If you're going to sell this meat in a meat model, it has to be as a premium pork. This marbling also makes it an incredibly good product for smoked meats, cured meats, what's typically known as charcuterie. This is a very hot trend in the foodie world. But you can see manageable levels of fat, great marbling, red meat. I wish I could let you taste it. It's got incredible flavor. We're over here now in the area of the farm we like to call Fraternity Row. We maintain currently 6 unique Meishan boars. To my knowledge, that's the largest unique boar herd in the United States. This is Tang. We obtained him from the USDA. He's just 3 years old now. He's a full-grown Meishan boar. The ability to manage this herd long-term is based on the proper management of the genetics that are available. And it's quite a story about how we came to come by all these pigs. Like I said, we were raising another breed of a hog, and I acquired a boar and 2 sows from a farmer who had gotten his pigs from Iowa State, and we were enthralled with the breed. Originally, we bought it to cross. We felt like it was too good a breed to cross with what we were raising, and I set off on a detective story. And for almost a year, anybody who was mildly associated with the original importation got an email from me, and I heard nothing back. One day in a Facebook group, somebody mentioned that Ohio State had some Meishans, and an argument broke out, and while they were arguing, I sent an email to Ohio State, and one of the swine geneticists there said, no, we've never had them, we don't have them, but I think I know someone who does. And it was from his kind gesture and his pointing me in the right direction that we got the University of Illinois sows. I drove all the way up to the University of Illinois, and I brought Pink Lady and Panda home in the back of a 2003 Astro minivan with the seats taken out, and they were sleeping on the floor. Got a lot of strange looks at gas stations. But I still didn't have enough boars to have a genetically diverse herd. I went back to that same individual at Ohio State, and he gave me the name of somebody at USDA at the Meat Animal Research Center that he knew was working with the Meishans. So I sent him an email, and I heard nothing back. But the U.S. government is great. They have a phone directory for every department. So one day this poor swine geneticist gets a call from a crackpot in Tennessee saying, hey, I'm interested in Meishans. And I don't think he's used to getting calls from small farmers. But he was great. He was very patient. And he said, well, you know, the decision has come down. We're about to disperse the Meishan herd and discontinue the study. And I said, well, how can I see if I can get some? And he said, well, I'll have to check with the facility director. So I waited 3 days, which is I thought was about the polite amount of time to wait before really being annoying. I called back, and he hadn't found out, and I got the number of the facility director, and he said, well, you can have the boars, but we're slaughtering all the sows. And literally my knees buckled. And if you can beg on the phone, that's what I was doing. And to his credit, well, I talked about the discussion that we had. We were allowed to drive out to Clay, Nebraska, which is 1,600 miles one way from where I'm standing right now. I borrowed a trailer and used a truck that wasn't big enough to pull it. Came back through a tornado, but I came back with the last of the USDA herd, of which Tang was one. It's been a blessing. It's given this breed an opportunity to be properly managed, because usually when you're saving a heritage breed, you come across somebody's farm that has the last of them. They've already all been inbred, and it's a matter of really documenting what you have. With the Guinea Hog Association, there were like 6 founding boars. Originally were entered as unrelated, and later DNA testing proved that a lot of them were related. I mean, it's a real struggle. But the unique history of the Meishan means we start out, when I got the pigs from USDA, I got a 3-generation pedigree. I know the coefficients of inbreeding on these pigs. I know these pigs are totally unrelated because of the 25-year isolation to the Illinois pigs, and they're both totally unrelated to the Iowa State pigs because there's 25 years of separation. It's a tremendous opportunity to save these pigs. And today, I got deeply involved with the startup of the American Meishan Breeders Association, because the Breeders Association was formed to benefit not just the breed, but the breeders. And it's formed not to tell people how to raise their pigs, but to provide an online pedigree database, which does exist today. And we'll go into that a little more later. But raising Meishans there are some differences from raising other pigs. Meishans are hyper prolific, so you've got to know, what am I going to do with all these babies? The other thing is they mature sexually very early. A Meishan female or Meishan male is fully sexually mature at 12 weeks. That is not an exaggeration. You're talking about a 35, 40-pound female that can be impregnated. So initially, you do have to split the piglets much earlier than you do with other pigs. The boars exist for one reason, and that's to breed. They can't live with other boars. They can't live with the sows, or they'll pester them. If you put them with a castrated barrow, they'll try to breed the barrow. Here at the farm, and we'll show you a shot of it later on Fraternity Row, we've created 7 unique boar lots. The boars can see each other through the fences, but we don't put them together. If you put 2 Meishan boars together, they will not fight like other pigs. They won't bite each other, they won't gore each other, but they will attempt to breed each other constantly. They will wrestle for dominance. Especially in hot weather, they will wear themselves out, and they can get sick or die from the stress they create. They stop drinking, they stop eating. So if you've dealt with a pig that has low boar libido, this is a completely different pig. I've had 12 and 13-week-old Meishan boars impregnate full-grown sows. So the separation of your boars from your sows is important. Now, once we get them separated, they're docile. They do tend to pace a little bit more. They'll talk to each other through the fence. We don't put the boars on a fence that is adjoining a sow. The sows go into heat every 21 days. The only time you hear a Meishan sow is when she's in heat. They have very active, very loud heats. They mount each other. It drives the boars crazy. So as you're planning, if you're planning to take on the Meishan breed, you need to plan on managing them separately. Now, one of the great things about them is because of their docile nature. Like I said, we have almost 3 miles of fencing here on the farm, and we have no electric. One of the things, and if we'll pan over here, we use woven wire 47-inch field fence, properly installed, and by that I mean post spacing at about no more than 8 feet on level ground, tighter on any slope, paying special attention to get lots of attachments and connectors at the bottom, because pigs defeat your fence at the bottom. Meishans are not climbing pigs like other breeds, like wild boar or Ossabaw. So a properly installed field fence is all you need. Like I said, if we do have an occasion where we put the boars and the sows together, we will reinforce that with a hog panel, because otherwise they stretch. That particular wire right there is class 3 wire. It has a high tensile strand in it. I don't care what kind of livestock you're raising. It's always better to spend another $20 or $30 a roll for your fencing, because over time, goats, sheep, they'll take that cheap stuff and they'll stretch it out of shape, and you'll constantly be fixing it up. So one of the things that you want to do is keep your boars separate. We're up here on another section of Fraternity Row to show you how we have all our boars in a line in these boar pens. We have fencing on both sides of the road, and then we'll set up chutes and run them across the breeding areas where they're the sows. I mean, Meishan pigs are incredibly docile, if you've seen today, but they're still pigs. If they think you want them to go somewhere, they're going to be resistant. So what we set up is little chutes, alleys, airlocks. We'll set up a little airlock on each gate area in the breeding areas, and we just let the pigs find their way in, close one door, open the other. We'll open up chutes across to the breeding areas. Anytime you're dealing with a 350-pound animal, even if it's docile, you just have to plan ahead a little bit. I mean, you're going to have an area where you can work them up into a trailer. You're going to have a way to move them from their residence area to their breeding area. We don't like to bring the sows in with a boar and boars on either side having to watch them breed. So we have breeding areas set up across the driveway so they don't share a fence. This is just one little thing that we've done on our farm. You don't have to do it on your farm, but I know it's great sometimes to go to other people's farms and see how they do things. Well, we've moved to another part of the farm. This is one of our farrowing areas. Pink Lady was in a farrowing area. She's bred and will have babies soon. Of course, we visited Panda with her litter of babies, and we're in here. She'll probably be in frame soon with Zishi, who is one of our USDA sows. Zishi is due in the next 2 to 3 weeks. In total, we have 4 sows bred for our spring litters here in spring 2018. From the beginning, the unique opportunity that we were presented here on the farm led us to become deeply involved with the American Meishan Breeders Association. The American Meishan Breeders Association is the only registry for Meishan pigs. Currently, I am its president. The association is working very hard to document the pedigree history of the documented pure Meishan pigs. All the pigs that came from USDA came with a 3-generation pedigree. I got a 1-generation pedigree on the Iowa pigs that I got. The 2 girls that we got from Illinois, we know who the parents of those pigs were. And today, there are pedigrees available for Meishans. Now, there are pigs out in the general population which, at least on their surface, appear to be pure, and some probably are. I recounted the story of how we got the pigs from Illinois and USDA. Iowa State dispersed their herd between 2008 and 2010. During that time, the pigs went to foreign countries as they dispersed them. A very small number of farmers got a hold of them, and some exotic animal breeders got a hold of them. So today, the undocumented pigs, the undocumented Meishans that are out there, probably come from one of 2 sources. The first source is that they are actually truly descendants of these pigs that were dispersed. And there are indications that while some of them may be pure, some of them are highly, highly inbred. The research that I've done working with the AMBA on the National Herd Survey indicates that a very small number of breeder pairs produced a number of piglets that were sold in 5 or 6 different exotic animal auctions. And what happens is somebody buys a Meishan at an exotic animal auction in Missouri and then buys one at an exotic animal auction in Tennessee or California, and they think they have an unrelated pig, and that's not true. As we've done the research, it really looks like I have traced pigs from the same breeding pair that occurred in Colorado, Wyoming, Illinois, Missouri, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. Inbreeding depression, that is the breeding of too closely, when you take breedings of pigs that are highly related and you begin to breed and rebreed them, you begin to lose traits in that pig, and that's in all swine. The typical traits of inbreeding depression are smaller litters, smaller size, less health, they're less hardy, and a lot of the pigs, the undocumented pigs that I see, are give indications that they're inbred. The other area that we're seeing pigs out there that are obviously Meishan influenced is that while the confinement industry did not like the Meishan sow as a production sow, they love Meishan cross boars as what they call heat check boars. They would buy semen from semen suppliers, and it would be Meishan semen. We would create these 50-50 Meishan boars, then breed those boars back to their offspring so they get a 75% Meishan, 25% something else. And because of the sex drive of the male, coupled with the fact that they're so docile, they're used as what's known as heat check boars. Large confinement facilities use artificial insemination, and the trick in artificial insemination is to know when the sow is in heat. A lot of breeds have very quiet heats. Well, they send a Meishan boar in, he shows them who's in heat, they inseminate, they don't get attacked by the boar when they move him back out. And there is some leakage of these high percentage boars. So when you're looking at an undocumented Meishan, there's nothing to say it's not a good pig. But what you don't know is the level of inbreeding, the level of purity, and the pedigree history. The American Meishan Breeders Association, and that's located at meishanbreeders.com. I recommend you go there. You'll be able to find a certified breeder who breeds registered stock where you can tell your coefficient of inbreeding, and you'll know what you're breeding. Now, I hear this argument all the time, you can't eat paper. I don't need a piece of paper to tell me it's a good pig, and that's absolutely right. You don't use a pedigree to determine what's a good pig. Use your eyes. What the pedigree tells you is what are your chances of producing as good or better pig in the next breeding. So for those looking at this as a meat animal especially, actually in either a meat or a genetics model, the pedigree lets you retain the shoulders, the back line, the prolificacy, all those things that make it Meishan, because those things that make it Meishan disappear and can disappear forever through heavy inbreeding. Once again, if you've got an undocumented pig and you want to bring in some documented Meishans, the greatest likelihood is that you have something with Iowa State genes. It's probably a high likelihood that it's inbred. So if you're going to bring in another bloodline to improve your stock, always look for a USDA or a USDA Illinois bloodline, because you know you've got 25 years of genetic separation. We're excited about having these pigs. We're trying to be responsible breeders. We encourage anyone looking at the line to breed them responsibly. Now, pedigreed stock is not inexpensive. You can probably expect to pay from a certified breeder with the American Meishan Breeders Association anywhere from $700 to $900 for breeding quality stock. But the thing is, you know what you have when you get it, you can breed it responsibly, and you can be a positive contributor to the preservation of the genetics of this breed. Well, we're back with Pink Lady again here in the maternity ward. She's finishing up the snack we gave her earlier. At this point, I'd like to address our breeding program here at God's Blessing Farm. We have a unique opportunity with the Meishan breed. Not only were they kept genetically isolated for over 25 years, they were also bred randomly, which I believe has had an impact on the breed in that the Chinese selectively bred them for 5,000 years. In order not to skew experiments, replacement stock was randomly picked from litters. This means we kind of have a blank slate as breeders. And one of the things about the American Meishan Breeders Association that I support completely is that it's a rather libertarian group. Breed the pigs for the features that you want. Here at the farm, there are a lot of the things that Pink Lady has that we're really excited about. We like the long pendulous ears. We like the heavy face folds. But we also like this long back line. Faster growth rate, achieving size at 9 to 10 months. These are all things that go in our evaluation program. We believe completely in that adage, breed the best, eat the rest. We farrowed over 100 piglets last year on the farm, and less than 35% were sold as breeders. We try to maintain very high standards, but there are standards, and they may not be yours. I hope you've enjoyed today's presentation. Obviously, the Meishan breed is a tremendously unique breed. It may or may not be in your future. We've tried to cover a lot. Obviously, we haven't covered everything. We invite you to visit us online. In a moment, you're going to have our web address, which is www.godsblessingfarm.com. You can find us on Facebook at God's Blessing Farm Registered Mashans. And if you're in the area, give us a call. Please give us advance notice. We're a working farm. If this is something you're seriously considering, we'd love to host you to see the pigs. It's a fantastic breed. And it's a fantastic breed that whose time has come again. It would be a real shame to have these pigs disappear. We've got two of the younger sows over there if you want to pan over, working one of our woodlots. Those two girls were born in August. I've also done a series of videos for the American Meishan Breeders Association, which you can find on YouTube. They're a lot shorter. It's the American Meishan Breeders Association YouTube channel. Once again, feel free to email us at the farm. Visit the American Meishan Breeders Association website, which is meishanbreeders.com. Send me an email. My email is rico@godsblessingfarm.com. I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. We hope you have a blessed year. We hope if pigs are in your future that you'll consider the Meishan breed, that you look at your farm model and see if it fits. Take care, everyone. Have a great year.